Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm coming to you from my deck again to give you a little bit of info on stuff I don't normally get to cover in history class. And today we're going to be talking about Belle Starr, the Bandit Queen of Oklahoma. Oklahoma was kind of a gray area for outlaws, Indian Territory. Because not quite sure whose jurisdiction it fell under. Did it fall under the tribal jurisdiction, or did U.S. courts have jurisdiction in Oklahoma? In fact, the Panhandle for a while was called Robber's Roost because of the haven for outlaws it provided for. So today we're talking about this lady, Myra Maybelle Shirley. She was born in Carthage, Missouri in 1848, and she was born to an affluent family. She had a great education growing up for a girl at the time period. She attended a school where she learned languages, she learned math, she learned music, and things were really great for her. She's the only girl in the family. She has a bunch of brothers. And even though she's attending school and getting what's known as a classical education, she also liked things to do with the outdoors. And so her brother, Bud, taught her how to ride a horse, how to shoot a gun, things like that. But life changed for Belle once the Kansas Missouri border wars started. If you guys will recall, or if you didn't know, in 1850, the Missouri Compromise is passed that said that the southern border of Missouri was going to be, and you can see it on this map right here. It says Missouri Compromise of 1820. I said 1850, I mean 1820, sorry. Said that anything that was admitted above this line would be entering the state as a free state. And it was all well and good when there didn't seem to be a state looming on the horizon to enter into the territory. But by this time period in U.S. history, we're on the verge of the Civil War. And you've got states such as Kansas and Nebraska that are wanting to enter the state. One is a slave and one is a free state. So the Kansas-Nebraska Act is passed in 1854, and it's passed in part by Stephen Douglas. He's the one who kind of helps push it through. And what it said was it kind of totally does away with the idea of this Missouri Compromise line. It says that a state can vote whether they wish to have slavery or not. It's a concept known as popular sovereignty. Well, this throws the country into a complete uproar. Rather, these three states right here, into a complete uproar. And the worst of the fighting takes place right here on the border between Missouri and Kansas, in what is known as the Border War. You will also hear it referred to as Bleeding Kansas. You had people known as Jayhawkers, coming over from Kansas to come into Missouri and to raid and to interfere in their politics. As well as the border ruffians from Missouri going over into Kansas and causing problems. Eventually, this is going to be settled with that Kansas-Nebraska Act. The Jayhawkers were anti-slave, and the border ruffians were pro-slavery. The county where Belle lived saw armed groups from both sides conflict come in there, and one of the groups that eventually come through is a guerrilla group known as the Quantrell Raiders. They were a guerrilla group that operated through the Civil War. Notable members of the group included Frank and Jesse James, as well as Cole Younger. And all three of those go on to become noted outlaws. One of the people that helped out Jesse James in Quantrell's Raiders was Belle's brother Bud. Because of his knowledge of the location, he provided as a scout for the area. But Bud is eventually going to be killed in 1864, and the Shirley family is going to move to Texas. In the 1850s, 1860s, 1870s, you see the formation of the James Younger Gang here. And they robbed their first bank in 1866. And they flee to Texas to get away from the police presence in Missouri. And they meet up with the Shirley family again. And Belle develops a crush on Cole Younger and then joins their gang. But the romance soon faded, and Belle didn't go on with the Younger James game when they left. Instead, she fell in love with a guy that she knew from before in Missouri by the name of Jim Reed. And Belle and Jim get married. And The Shirley farm had been granting haven to the outlaws, but once Jim and Belle get married, they kind of settle down and do away with their work for the present time with the outlaws. Jim tries to settle down and be a family farmer, but it doesn't take too well. And before long, he returns to his outlaw ways and allegedly kills a man. And so the family was forced to move to California. Um, while their time in Texas, they had a daughter that was given the nickname Pearl. And by the time they moved to California, they have a son born. In 1869, Belle and Reed and two others ride into Indian territory and capture and torture an Old Creek Indian till he revealed his hiding place of $30,000 in gold. The gang returned to Texas, and Belle began her reign as a bandit queen. But in 1874, Reed is killed in a gunfight by a member of his own gang. So Belle left her children with her mom and began riding the outlaw trails in Texas and Indian territory. She gets this idea of making her own gang. She comes up into Indian territory and falls in love with an Indian outlaw you see here who went by the name of Blue Duck, but later left him for Sam Starr, which is where she gets her last name Starr from. They settled down on Starr's 62-acre ranch on the north side of the Canadian River. And from the Starr's ranch, which Belle named Younger's Bend in honor of Cole Younger, the newlyweds form a gang that began to participate in bootlegging, in cattle rustling, and horse thieving, and all these attempts at crime are allegedly masterminded by Belle. Not only did the ranch provide an base of operation for Belle, but it also provided a safe haven for outlaws such as Jesse James. The hanging judge, Isaac Parker, kind of gets tired of Belle and Sam causing problems and wants them brought in. And Belle and Sam are brought in numerous times, but things happen, evidence doesn't meet up to standards, and they're let go several times. In 1882, though, Belle is caught red-handed. Belle and Sam are caught red-handed stealing horses. They make it back to Judge Parker's court. Belle is sentenced to 2 terms of 6 months apiece, Sam to a year in federal prison. They both go to prison in Detroit. And you would think that maybe something like that might be something to make them stop. But no, when they come back to Oklahoma, to Indian Territory, they start up their thieving ways again. By this time, though, dime novels of the time had caught on to this idea of Belle Starr as a bandit queen. And so they wrote these overly romanticized stories about Belle Starr, calling her the female Jesse James. And so for a time, she took part in a Western show playing to this image. In 1886, Sam Starr gets into a gunfight and is killed. And in 1889, Belle remarries for the 3rd time, this time to a guy much younger than her by the name of Jim July. But it's not a happy union. They fight quite often. In fact, after one violent fight, July offered one of the members of the gang $200 to kill Belle. And the member of the gang refused. And July allegedly said, "I'll kill the old hag myself and spend that $200 on whiskey." A few days later, Belle mysteriously was killed in an ambush. She was just 41 years old. Everyone from July to her 2 children, whom she was estranged from, were suspects, but no one was ever arrested for her murder. When she died, a newspaper declared her to be a most desperate woman. And perhaps this death is fitting for someone who lived a life of violence and became a legend. After she died, her reputation was romanticized as that of an elegant woman dressed to the nines, wearing a feathered sombrero with a Colt 45 that she called My Baby. And she earned herself a new name and rode off into history, into legend, becoming Belle Starr, the Bandit Queen. Her tombstone that her daughter Pearl put up has her favorite horse at the top, and is a fitting tribute for Belle Starr. So that's it for this edition of Odd Little Tidbits of History. If you have any ideas that you want to suggest, people that you want to know a little bit more, items that you want know a little bit more about, please reach out to me through Remind. I'd love to hear from you guys, and have a great day.